Okay, so we are going to continue this now. So here are my first 3 examples that I have for you guys, okay? So you can label them A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, doesn't matter to me. We are using the same functions as you just were, and now I have different numbers, okay? So on my first example, I have G of F of negative 3, okay? So what's my input? What's the number that I'm using? What's my input? What's the number? Negative 3 is this input, right? And which function do I plug that into first? I plug it in for x, but for which function? My f function, okay? So that's my inner one, so that's what I do first. And in one of my earlier classes, I had a student say that they get really confused with the parentheses. So one of the things that I like to do when I do these kinds of problems is I like to identify my inner function. And then when I rewrite it, I'll make the outer parentheses really big so I know like what's inside and what's not, okay? So we're going to find f of negative 3 first. So f of negative 3 is negative 3 plus 1, which is negative 2. Is that okay so far? Mm-hmm. What do I do with that negative 2? Yeah, I input that. That is my new input for G. So now I have G of negative 2. So that is 2 times negative 2 plus 3, which is negative 4 plus 3, which is negative 1. So that means that G of F of, oh my gosh, negative 3 is negative 1, and that will be my final answer, okay? Okay, to continue, next I have H of G of negative 2. Can I have a volunteer tell me what do I start with? Somebody haven't heard them today. Yes, you want to go? What do I do? The 2? Okay, so negative 2 gets plugged into G of X, or gets substituted in. So I'm going to do G of negative 2, which is 2 times negative 2 plus 3. So I get negative 1. Okay, can I get somebody else to tell me what do I do next? What is my next step? Input negative 1 into H of X. So I have H of negative 1 equals negative 1 quantity squared minus 6, which is 1 minus 6, which is negative 5. So that means H of G of negative 2 is negative 5. That's my second answer. Is that okay so far? Okay, can you guys try number 3 for me, please? For the third one, what answer did you guys get? 15. Okay, did anybody not get 15 and you don't know how I got 15? Okay, for number 3, I'm going to plug 5 into F. So that gives me 5 plus 1 is 6. Then I'm going to take 6 and plug that into G. So 2 times 6 is 12, plus 3 is 15. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, now on the next slide, there is a lot of writing. It's like 4 sentences. Please write it down. All this is the mathematical definition of composition, what you just did, okay? What you just did. The term composition refers to the combining of functions in a manner where the output from one function becomes the input for the next, okay? So composition just means plug a thing in, get an output, that is your new input, okay? The notation for composition is G of F of X, or F of G of X, or G of H. It doesn't have to be F and G, it can be any function name. But it's G of F with the parentheses, or G of F with the little circle, and it's read G composed of F of X, or G of F of X, and that's normally how I'll say it. And then any number for X first gets substituted into function F of X, the result from that is then substituted into function g of x. And like I said, my function isn't always f. It isn't always g. So a better way to think of this is f of x, or whatever the inner function is. We always substitute into the inner function first. And then instead of g of x, next is our outer function. That always comes second, okay? So copy that down.